Sam Dunn's all-new podcast, Caught in a Rant. Available now, exclusively on Patreon.
Fucking kudos. I never get sick of listening to that part. I'll shut up now. Love it. But you know the part I'm talking about. You know the part.
Yeah, that's a heavy part.
And it just, it holds off, man. I credit you guys.
How's it going, BangerTV fans? Dylan Gowan here. Welcome back to another installment of Overkill Reviews, BangerTV's weekly heavy metal review show. I am back at my practice space, bringing you guys another progressive metal album to review. Nothing too much has happened between my last review of the Catatonia record up until now. I did see, however, Seven Spires, Helvetia, and Omnium Gatherum the other day. All three bands just put on a phenomenal show, so if that tour is ever rolling through your town, definitely check it out because all three bands are absolutely killer. Speaking of killer bands, here's a band I've always wanted to talk about on the channel. It's the fourth studio album by OBLIVISCARIS called Exul, out today on Season of Mist. If I had to summarize the career of OBLIVISCARIS so far, I would say it's one of great perseverance and patience. Forming in 2003 in Melbourne, Australia, the band would experience many challenges at the beginning with various lineup changes. Their efforts were well rewarded with their debut album Portal of Eye in 2012, which was praised for its imaginative songwriting and storytelling. Building off of the success of their first album, their follow-up record Citadel catapulted them into being a headline act, becoming one of Prague's most sought-after live bands. Australia is just a progressive metal factory. I mean, you get groups like Voyager, 12-Foot Ninja, The Omnific, Carnival, Caligula's Horse, Alarum, and then you also have the guitar sensation of Pliny. It's just amazing that that part of the world just turns out just great band after great band. So Australia, just keep doing what you're doing because you're really contributing to progressive metal very, very well. They were also one of the first metal bands to really utilize the full potential of Patreon. I know at the time there was kind of a bit of a social stigma, like because it was such a newer thing, but now even the critics of OBLIVISCARIS have now joined onto Patreon. It's been kind of universally acceptable, and it's great because the fans get to get some exclusive perks like different merch or different videos that are only exclusive to the Patreon and not shared anywhere else on different social media platforms. And speaking of which, we can't do these videos without the support of our amazing Patreon donors. So wherever you are all over the world, thank you guys so much for contributing to the channel. We really, really appreciate it, and it really helps kind of keep the lights on wherever we are. This is the longest stretch between albums for OBLIVISCARIS, just over 6 years. So my question going into this review is, what new elements are they bringing into their songwriting? And what differs on this album versus all the other previous releases? And is this record worth the wait? Well, let's get into the review. The band is known for their epic and ambitious songwriting, which is carried over into Exul. Many bands who attempt to create drawn-out song structures sometimes can get caught in the more technical side of things, and then it just devolves into kind of noodle salad and unnecessary sudden shifts in tonality. OBLIVISCARIS are able to overcome all this by having a big emotional component of their songs, which is very intriguing to listen to. One moment it can be very intense and very chaotic before it flows into a more beautiful and more somber side of their sound. There are moments where it feels like there is no hope and the walls are caving in, but there's a sudden sense of optimism with the ebb and flow of all these different tracks. And it's that careful balance of all these different emotions that they're able to convey with all of these songs that make this album so memorable and just downright inspiring. There's also a lot more aggression and sadness this time around in terms of the overall timbre of the instruments. The difficult recording process has definitely carried over into the performances because this album sounds a lot heavier than previous releases. The violin has always been a key distinction and focal point of the band's overall sound, and when you have something that's different from your contemporaries, it is hard to not abuse it. However, OBLIVISCARIS are able to find the perfect balance by utilizing the effectiveness of the instrument sparingly to put further emphasis on the emotional component of their songs. It's an effective instrument that really conveys feelings of loneliness and isolation and pining for the past, and they use this as a really effective tool rather than using a violin as a crutch or a gimmick. A moment that demonstrates this point perfectly would be early in the song Misericord 1, As the Flesh Falls, where the violin causes a lot of tension within the song before it crescendos, helping to set up one of the best riffs I ever heard on a Nail Obliviscaris record. The violin never loses its allure on this album, and when you hear it, you're waiting in great anticipation for its return. Amongst the barrage of the tech death and progressive-inspired riffs lie a ton of great solos on this album, and yet they're all very melodic. There's a lot of frantic shredding moments, but they're a lot more musically diverse and fit every song perfectly. A solo that jumps to mind immediately would be the final few minutes of the opening song, Equus, which really cuts through arguably the most intense parts of the album to help set up a perfect ending to an already great song. Also, the violin solo in the song Grawl, and makes the part more hypnotic, makes an already interesting section a lot more impactful. Have a listen to this. Solos can be used as more of a filler section to kind of buy time to get back into the main focus of the tune, but rather these moments really push the song forward into another memorable moment. And when somebody is taking a solo in the band, they're not overshadowing any of the other instruments, but rather supporting them. One thing I immediately focus on when listening to an album is the drumming for, well, obvious reasons. Dan Presslin delivers a masterclass on extreme metal drumming and shows why his performances on all of the band's records are so distinct. What makes him such a great player is that he doesn't automatically default to typical tech death drumming. You still get the fast double kicks and the blast beats, which are all well and good and very impressive when executed, but there's far more innovation in his playing. Take, for example, a song like As the Flesh Falls, where he chooses to move around the kit with all this really sparse tom patterns and while playing the fast double kick. I mean, it blows my mind every time I listen to it, so check this out. It's those types of choices that make his playing stand out amongst the pack, because he's trying to take chances and try something that's different that not a really lot of drummers in this style have really explored. Even his fills are a lot more creative, like the opening section in Suspire, where he's able to throw in all of these kind of flam triplets and alternative single strokes between the hands and the feet. It's so tasteful, and you gotta listen to it. Even the tom groove that he creates in the song and how it's fantastic with all the kind of limb independent stuff that he's able to pull off. Listen, I could just literally talk about his drumming all day. It's just absolutely excellent. Even though it's sad, I'm sad to see him go, I'm also really excited to see the new drummer of Nail Obliviscaris kind of put his spin on what Dan has helped build. He is easily the highlight of this record, and that has no inherent bias with me being a drummer. Well, okay, maybe a little bit of bias, but still, he's a great drummer, and that cannot be disputed. Much like with all the releases, Zen and Tim's vocals work really, really well together. I love the haunting and shrieking vocal style of Zen combined with Tim's soaring and bright vocals, and it really lends itself to some of the band's most intriguing moments. There are several moments where there's long stretches of the songs where there is no vocals whatsoever, and I thought, oh, they could jump in here, and that would really help kind of push the section forward. Because it feels like Nail Obliviscaris, they have so many weapons at their disposal because they're all such great, strong songwriters, that I just find it weird that sometimes they kind of pull the vocals a little bit back when I don't think they should. They're strong vocalists, and they deserve to be heard. This is an album that's well worth the wait, as the band delivers another great performance. It's really hard for them, in my opinion, to top Citadel, which I think is their magnum opus, but this album really comes close to taking that spot. There are a lot of strong progressive metal albums that are already out this year, and we're not even halfway through March. This is going to be a great year for prog, and I have no doubt that Nail Obliviscaris are going to be in contention for Album of the Year. Maybe too early to say that, but to see them being thrown in the conversation is a no-brainer. This album easily gets a 4.5 out of 5 skulls. They knock it out of the park all the time. And yeah, I cannot wait to see this band live in the fall. All right, it's time for some shoutouts. Here are some other albums you should definitely check out today. First up, I would recommend checking out Contrarian with their new album Sage of Shekhinah, which comes out on Willowtip Records. Absolutely amazing progressive metal that kind of remind me a bit of Atheist and Cynic and Human Era Death. So if you're a fan of the more kind of old school style of extreme progressive metal, you should definitely check them out. I can see that this band could also really tour well with Horrendous. I've recently got back into them, and yeah, Contrarian are just a really, really freaking solid progressive metal band that everybody should definitely check out. Next up, I would recommend Redemption, Eye on the Storm, which comes out on AFM Records. Grey Stag, Call of the Mountain, which is an independent release. I found these guys on Bandcamp, and if you're a fan of Mastodon and Kalesa, then definitely check out Grey Stag because they have a lot of sludge moments and doom kind of incorporated within progressive metal. Periphery's new album, Djent is Not a Genre, comes out on 3 Dot Recordings. This might be Periphery's best album to date. And it just feels like after listening to P2 as well as Djent is Not a Genre, it feels like they're so neck and neck with each other that it's hard for me to pick which one of those two is the best Periphery record. But Periphery are just, they crushed it on this record. So definitely check out Djent is Not a Genre. I mean, it's kind of changing my opinion about it. Like, I think Djent has been around long enough that it technically is, and I know that's kind of sacrilege within prog metal, and I know I said a while back that it isn't, but that's a whole other debate for another day. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comment section below, what did you think of Exul? I really, really enjoyed it. See you soon, take care, and listen to some more prog.